Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex. If you guys are anything like me, you often find yourselves wondering about random things. Last night, I was very curious as to whether sharks freak out if they smell their own blood. I did try to Google that, but a precursory Google search did not give me what I needed to know. I'm going to have to do a deep dive later into some Google Scholar, but for today, I'm also wondering about water. So I know we're supposed to drink up to 8, or at least 8 glasses of water a day, but why? Like, what does it do? Water is supposedly not contributing any calories, but does that mean it has no nutritional benefits? Today, we're going to find out. So, let's start at the beginning, the very best place to start, according to Miss Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. We are going to delve directly into water. What is it? As many of us likely learned in school, H2O is the name of the molecule that is water. It's made of 2 light hydrogen atoms that are attached to a much heavier oxygen atom. That is the chemical definition of water. And we need that for processing our nutrients and bringing certain micronutrients to our bodies, like calcium and vitamin D. We've talked in the past about how certain vitamins are fat soluble, but other vitamins and minerals are also water soluble. So getting enough water each day is really important for our health. That's why we sometimes crave things like water. We need some more water. That's why we get thirsty. It's your body telling you, hey, I need more water. A lot of times we'll turn to artificially sweetened or sugar sweetened beverages instead. And that's not great, but there is also a little bit of water involved in your food. You can get some fluids through the foods that you're eating. So, for example, the obvious one is going to be soups that are largely made of broth, like chicken noodle soup, and foods with a high water content, like celery, any type of melons, tomatoes, cantaloupes, watermelons, all that jazz. That's going to help contribute to your fluid intake. So what does that water do? Well, the first thing it does is it helps keep your temperature normal. You may remember from school talking about a concept called homeostasis, and that means keeping your cells and your body kind of in balance. And one of those things that goes into that is going to be keeping your temperature regulated. It also helps lubricate and cushion your joints. It can protect your spinal cord and other sensitive tissues from damage. And it helps you eliminate waste through the body through urination, perspiration, and bowel movements. You need more water than those normal 8-ounce glasses a day if you are in hot climates or if you're being more physically active than you typically are, if you're running a fever, or if you're experiencing diarrhea or vomiting. So really, these are all things in which you would lose fluids. If you're in a hot climate, if you're physically active, if you're running a fever, you're going to be losing that largely through sweat. And if you have diarrhea or vomiting, think we all know how we lose water in those aspects. So we want to make sure that we are putting enough extra water in there on top of those 8-ounce glasses, 8-ounce glasses, in order to maintain our bodies where it needs to be to help keep our temperature normal, particularly if we're running a fever, and to help our bodies feel good. You might not think of water immediately if your bones are aching or anything like that, but it can help. Now, if you think you're not getting enough water, it's important to, carry a water bottle with you when you're running errands. I like to carry a water bottle with me. I have one of those metal reusable ones, so I'm trying to stay away from, any carcinogenic components in plastic bottles, even reusable plastic bottles. So I have my metal one here, and it has this neat little cap that screws down on the top of it, but it's also has like a rubber gasket inside, so this thing does not leak. It turned upside down in my backpack last week while I was hiking the local park, and nothing got wet. It was crazy. And I had like a sweater and everything in there just in case, and a book. So that was a dangerous game I was playing because I could have harmed my book, but it worked really well for me overall. I really recommend it. It's the Built brand. Now, if you just don't like water, one recommendation that I would put forth is adding, some lemon or lime to your water to change the taste a little bit. You can also put cucumbers in it, sliced up cucumbers, sliced up watermelon, any sliced up fruit really, just to give it a little bit more flavor based on what you prefer in yours. My favorite is the cucumber one, or a cucumber watermelon, or I'll put lemon in it. I'm not as big a fan of the lime in my water, strangely enough, because if I drink sparkling water, which is not a one-for-one trade, then I do prefer the lime-flavored ones. But that's neither here nor there. What I really am getting at is just try a couple different things and see what works best for you to get you drinking more water. I like to approach it from a sustainability component as well, so I do use the metal water bottle because I'm trying to be more sustainable. My metal one isn't really prone to cracking like a plastic one would be, and one raindrop raises the sea, trying to do my part in environmentalism as well. So if that is also important to you, go ahead and pick you up a new water bottle. You can also freeze certain freezer-safe water bottles. So if you mostly just want cold water, then you can take a cold water with you in the morning and it's going to gradually thaw out for you so it stays cold all day. And then you can also maintain that cold water if you only like drinking cold water. I only like drinking room temperature water, pretty much. So we have one of those floor pump waters that we refill at the grocery store, and it's pretty awesome, I think, in my opinion. And you just pump it into your container, and it works really well. That way we don't have to keep it in the fridge. But my ex likes to have cold water, so we just keep a separate container filled in the fridge for him, just another pitcher. So we'll just fill it up from that, stick it in the fridge. With exercising a lot, I'm sure a lot of you watched this Super Bowl yesterday. I saw part of the pregame while I was working out in my local gym, and they were talking about how a lot of the players had been pre-hydrating all week. So if you've not heard of pre-hydrating, if you're going to be traveling for work, for play, for whatever reason in a hot climate, or you're going to be more physically active, like a lot of archaeologists do cultural resource management archaeology, so they go out and they dig holes, more or less, in order to make sure that areas that are under development are not going over top of cultural heritage sites or anything like that. They check to see what's beneath the surface of the ground so that we can preserve those cultural heritage components. It's pretty cool. But when they do that, they have to go out for a week or more at a time, and they're constantly digging. So it's very physically active. A lot of times it's in hot climates. So they'll do something called pre-hydrating, which is just like what the NFL players were doing this past week. They said during the pregame show that they've been doing it for a couple weeks actually, so they will be intaking more electrolytes, so drinking a lot of Gatorade, drinking a lot of water. If you're going to be traveling, I also recommend that you prehydrate. So that's drinking more than those 8-ounce glasses a day and preparing your body for not just the water, but also those electrolytes. Remember, we still want to be active if we're going to be drinking Gatorade because it does have sugar added to it, but we also do need those electrolytes. So drink a little bit of Gatorade and a little bit of extra water each night leading up into your trip. All right, we're going to go on a break. Stay tuned. If you're anything like me, you wear a dozen hats on any given day and are juggling a ton of ideas and projects that you want to bring to life. However, making those dreams into a reality can be very difficult, particularly if you are not blessed with the creative gift of design. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd is a website that has over 750,000 global designers ready to help create your perfect custom design. It's as easy as going to their website, posting a brief describing the design you want, and then 750,000 designers will be invited to design your logo or creative work for you. Within a few hours, you can receive your first design, and over the course of a few days, you may receive up to 100 or more different designs from designers all over the world. Then you just pick the one that you like the best and approve the payment to that designer. Design Crowd takes a lot of the frustration out of having to hire a freelancer because you get to see the work product up front and to select the one that you like best and only pay for that one. Simply go to designcrowd.com/health and wellness to learn more and save up to $150 when you start any project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness, or simply enter the discount code health and wellness when posting a project on Design Crowd.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about water in general, and now I'm going to hit you with some cold, hard water facts. We already know that water does not have any calories, so a lot of folks recommend it for managing your body weight and reducing calorie intake by drinking water instead of soda or, you know me, caramel macchiatos. This morning I went straight for water instead. I'm proud of myself. I'll still probably have one later, but, baby steps, little steps. We also know that water can help prevent dehydration, and we talked a little bit about prehydrating. But did you know that in 2005 through 2010, United States youth drank an average of 15 ounces of water, and U.S. adults drank an average of 39 ounces of water on a given day? That's a little crazy because we are supposed to be drinking 8-ounce glasses. So it should be 64 ounces, but adults are only drinking 39 and youth only 15. Your daily water intake is defined as the amount of water consumed from not just your drinking water, but also from your foods and other beverages. Because as we've mentioned earlier, other beverages, including milk, juice, even sodas, do have water in them as well. Your daily fluid intake recommendations also are going to depend on your age, your sex, whether or not you're pregnant and whether or not you're breastfeeding. There's not really a recommendation, according to the CDC at least, and I do kind of take them as an authority on this type of thing, as to how much water you should be getting each day from your beverages and foods other than water, just other than plain old water. But you can get water from your foods. I did read a couple of Google Scholar articles, and some folks had it at about 20% of people's water comes from food, and others say that they think that was underestimated. So it could be 20% or more. It's not going to be 100%, I don't think, unless you're just consuming a ton of melons each day, which, no judgment. You do what's good for you. But it would take a lot in order to get all of that through food each day. Amongst U.S. youth, plain water intake is lowest in younger children who are non-Hispanic, Black, or Mexican American. And in U.S. adults, plain water intake is lowest in older adults, lower income adults, and those with lower education. So we've talked in a previous episode about how socioeconomic factors like poverty and education can adversely affect people in a disproportionate manner regarding nutrition and health. So water is no exception. U.S. adolescents who drank less water tended to drink less milk, eat fewer fruits and vegetables, drank more sugar-sweetened beverages, ate more fast food, and overall obtained less physical activity. So we can see here that socioeconomic status, behavior, and ethnicity, age, etc., all of these intersectional factors can really impact why someone is not getting enough water. Also, it depends on where people live. If you live out in the middle of the woods and you have well water, like the way I grew up, that well water was amazing in the Appalachian Mountains. It almost tastes sweet. It's so cold and delicious. But since moving to Texas, I'm like, ew, city water. So I have to get it in the pump container I mentioned earlier because I don't want to use, a lot of plastic bottles, particularly since a lot of water companies are in the business of taking water from places that they should not be. I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but that has definitely popped up recently with certain water companies who are sourcing it from Native American land. They have been taking it from waters that are supposed to be protected as well, and environmental issues. So these areas are supposed to be protected culturally or environmentally, or really they don't have the property rights to it, and they're just taking the water from there. So I'm trying to be more socially conscious about where I obtain my water from, and if that's something that interests you, then even if the potential carcinogens and stuff from the plastic don't bother you that much, then this is another aspect to consider. Socioculturally, we have a water problem in addition to biologically and from a sustainability perspective. So there are a lot of factors that go into who gets to drink good water, who gets to drink more water in general. We like to think of water as, a human right, but in a lot of cases, like in Flint, Michigan, it's not the case. Flint still doesn't have clean water. There are a lot of entrepreneurs and people who have really big hearts who have been going out there and doing a lot of work to help fix this for them. But really, a lot of it is just putting a patch on it because the government is still not getting these people clean water. Similarly, in my hometown area, at one point, the area had a lot of hexavalent chromium in the water, and it was way above the levels that were deemed safe. If hexavalent chromium sounds familiar, that is because it was the problem that was in the water in the Aaron Brockovich movie. But instead of making the water safe again by dealing with the hexavalent chromium, they just changed the laws in my original state to go ahead and allow more hexavalent chromium in the water. They just change the number that would be safe instead of following the scientists' recommendations and really, removing that from the water supply or providing an alternative water supply. It's a tiny Appalachian town, so nobody really cared about it to fix it. Just like a lot of people are not caring to fix Flint, even though it's in an urban center. These type of things happen all over the United States, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. So when we read these statistics, and it says that certain people who are of a particular age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, etc., are drinking less water, it is often because it is not available to them or they have not been able to obtain it. Because as we've talked before about food deserts and food insecurity, you can have that same problem with access to good water. Now, I think it's very important to consider the whys of things as we go along. I know we mostly focus on health and wellness, but if we don't know why things are the way they are, we won't know why we should be doing things in a different way. So I hope that helped make a little bit of more sense for you guys regarding who drinks water and why. So for tap water, if you go to nutritiondata.self.com, you can set the nutrition label to have a 1 cup or 8 fluid ounce serving size for water tap drinking is what it's labeled as. And then scroll down past all the zeros because it's talking about carbs and everything. And there are no carbs in water. As we said, there's no calories. And we get down to the minerals. So in 1 8-ounce glass of water, 1 serving of water, there is 7.1 milligrams of calcium, which is just 1% of your daily value. But if you drink 8 of them a day, then that is 8%, or about 56 milligrams, almost 57. For magnesium, also 1% of your daily value for the single serving. Same for copper, and 169 micrograms of fluoride. Now that's if you have city water or water that has fluoride in it. We're going to go on another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how fluoride affects you when it's in your water by consulting the American Cancer Society and Harvard Health. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Water. So, we ended it on the discussion of fluoride. So we're going to delve into that a little bit. I like to consult the experts when I am looking into the hows and whys and whats of everything. I'm a very curious person, and I like to consult the experts. So, Harvard Health has done a study on whether fluoridated drinking water is safe. I remember having to do the fluoride swish in elementary school. I was homeschooled after that, but I don't know if anyone else remembers that, where they would bring in those little white paper cups and they would put fluoride in it, because we didn't really have fluoride in our water where I grew up, where most of us were in the mountains and we had well water, and I don't think even our city water was fluoridated. But we would do that like once a month. It wasn't even that frequently. And it was super weird. And you would all stand in line to swish this around in your mouth and then spit it out in the water fountain or the sink or wherever. So I'm curious as to how that works. Does that even do anything at this point? I'm a country girl, and since moving to the city, I don't really enjoy city water, and that is typically what's fluoridated. So, what does Harvard have to say? They say that we've been adding fluoride minerals to our water since the mid-1940s, and it was supposed to prevent tooth decay. There were health concerns about it that have been largely dismissed until recently. Now we have a lot of fluoridated toothpaste. There's fluoride fortified mouthwash everywhere and other consumer products that say they boost dental health by putting more fluoride into your body. With that said, we still have fluoridated water, so the risks from consuming the fluoridated water may outweigh the benefits for some people, depending on how much fluoride you're really intaking on a regular basis. So for the first time in several years, over 50 years actually, the U.S. Public Health Service lowered its recommendation for levels of fluoride in drinking water in around, 2015. And this is why. So they started seeing evidence in the early 20th century of high levels of naturally occurring fluoride in certain community water supplies to low levels of tooth decay. So there was a correlation between tooth decay being not as common if there was fluoride in community water strains. In 1945, Grand Rapids, Michigan was the first community in the world to add fluoride to their tap water, so supplementary fluoride, although some water supplies naturally have fluoride there. Several more studies were conducted over the years, and they showed a significantly lower rate of cavities in school children. So water fluoridation was implemented in a bunch of other towns and cities. The CDC even named fluoridating tap water to be one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century at the time. But now we have a lot of experts really questioning the scientific basis for that intervention, which is good. It's important in science that we go through and reassess things periodically. We call those validation studies, and they just go, hey, is this really doing what it's meant to? We have new research methods now. Is this old standard holding up? How was the science and math back then different than now? And what can the math and science today really tell us that we might not have been able to tell back then? So in June 2015, the Cochrane Collaboration, which is a global independent network of researchers and healthcare professionals who do exactly what I was talking about, examining scientific reviews of public health policies for making sure that things are the way that they should be, they published an analysis of 20 key studies on water fluoridation. What they found was that while water fluoridation is effective at reducing tooth decay among children, there were no studies that aimed to determine the effectiveness of water fluoridation for preventing cavities in adults that met the review's inclusion criteria. They also found that early scientific investigations on water fluoridation, most of them were conducted before 1975, were deeply flawed. They said, quote, "We had concerns about the methods used or the reporting results in 97% of the studies," unquote. So one problem here is that early studies didn't take into account how there was a subsequent widespread use of fluoride-containing toothpaste and other dental fluoride supplements, like, just using mouthwash at home, and those also prevent cavities. So that might explain why countries that don't fluoridate their water have also seen big drops in cavity rates. It may not be fluoridating the water itself, it may be the supplementary uses of fluoride via toothpaste and stuff. So if you go to the Harvard website, they have a bunch of really nice charts about that, and they all look pretty similar, no matter which country it is. They looked at Australia, Chile, Israel, Ireland, New Zealand, South Korea, Spain, the UK, and the US. and it has declined significantly from 1975 onward in each of those countries. So, fluoride itself may actually be dangerous at high levels, so don't panic, just at high levels. Excessive fluoride can cause something called fluorosis. That's a change in your dental enamel that ranges from barely noticeable white spots to staining and pitting. So if you're getting these white spots on your teeth or staining or pitting and you are using fluoride fortified toothpaste, fluoride fortified mouthwash, and your water is fluoridated, if you're adding in all that extra fluoride, then, maybe dial it back just a little bit. Fluoride can also become concentrated in your bones. So that stimulates bone cell growth and alters the tissue structure, and overall it weakens your skeleton. So we don't think about our skeleton a lot when we think about water, but we are going to talk a little bit more about that later as well. So perhaps what is most worrisome, according to the Harvard researchers, is that they did some studies in lab animals and found that high levels of fluoride may be toxic to brain and nerve cells. They've also performed human epidemiological studies and have found some possible links to learning, memory, and cognitive defects, although some of those studies have focused on populations with fluoride exposures that were a lot higher than those typically provided by U.S. water supplies. So again, don't panic. If you're concerned about it, talk to your doctor. I'm just reporting what Harvard and the American Cancer Society have to say about this. It's always important to follow up with your doctor if you want some more information about how it may be affecting you personally. So the bottom line here is that we really need to recognize that fluoride has been beneficial for our dental development and for protecting against cavities. But do we really need to add it in the drinking water anymore so that people can have access to it? Well, to do that, they want to establish 3 priorities. First, since dental cavities decreased in countries with and without fluoridating their water, we have to make sure we're dosing our water with the proper amount of fluoride for dental medicine purposes, but not any more than that. We also need to make sure that fluoridation doesn't raise the risk of adverse health effects. So we want to make sure it's not damaging our teeth or our bones or our brains. We need more research that would help us understand how fluoride might be toxic to a developing brain. We also need to find out if there are populations that are disproportionately highly vulnerable to fluoride in the drinking water, like maybe infants who have to intake formula, and that formula is made with tap water, for example, or for patients undergoing dialysis. We want to make sure that because their kidneys are already having a lot of problems, that fluoridation is not going to make that any worse for them. And if those individuals are at risk, then they need to be getting water from a source that is lower in fluoride. So you can usually go online and Google how much fluoridation is in your particular area's drinking supply. You can go to a city hall meeting as well, or a town hall meeting, and ask your town hall council members about what is going on with your fluoride. Ask to see, what the numbers are on that, and then you can, talk to an expert about it. That's what people are experts for, so we can talk to them. A lot of them don't mind just answering questions from the general public. So reach out to an expert in your area if you have more questions. All right, we are going to go on another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more about water fluoridation and cancer risk, as well as what happens when we remove fluoride from the tap water.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
segment, we were consulting Harvard Health as to whether fluoride is really good for us or not. We found that it is good for your teeth and our bones, but there is too much of a good thing, just like we've discussed with any of our other topics. Anything, if you don't do it in moderation, can often be harmful. So, what does the American Cancer Society have to say about that? Well, they found a possible link between water fluoridation and cancer in some studies, and they wanted to address all of the studies that they found, both positive and negative. And this is not a position statement of the American Cancer Society. This is just what they found. So they've not gotten to the point where they want to make a firm stance on it, but they're going to present you with the data and let people make up their own minds. So what is fluoride? Well, they are compounds that combine the element fluorine with another substance, which is usually a metal. Don't panic just because it has a metal in it. That's just how chemistry works a lot of times. Examples of that include sodium fluoride, stannous fluoride, and MFP fluoride, monofluorophosphate. So some fluorides will occur naturally in soil, air, and water, although the levels of fluoride can vary widely depending on where you are. Almost all water has some fluoride, and you can also get it from plant and animal food sources. Once it's in the body, fluorides absorb into your blood through your digestive tract. They travel through your blood after that and tend to collect in areas that are high in calcium, which is why you can get those white spots on your bones and teeth if you have a lot of fluoride fortified items in your home. If it's, not just your water, but also your toothpaste and your mouthwash, if you're using those excessively, then it can cause those spots. That's just because your teeth and your bones are high in calcium and fluoride tends to collect there. So how are people exposed to fluoride? Water, other beverages, food, fluoride in your dental products, but because dental products are generally not swallowed unless it's by younger kids, they're less of a concern for possible health issues. Now, that does mean that if you've been swallowing your fluoride, don't do that. There's a reason that we called it swish, where you swish it around your mouth and then spit it out when I was a kid. We don't want to swallow it. So if you have fluoride in your drinking water, you have that in about 3 out of 4 Americans. So about 75% of the American drinking water supply is fluoridated. The decision to add more of that is made at the state or local level. So there are some federal regulations for things in the United States, and then we also have something called states' rights, where the individual states can make certain decisions. We see that right now with the legalization of marijuana in some areas. So some states have it, some don't, whereas it's still not technically legal at the federal level. So if you're an FBI agent, you cannot, smoke pot at all. They're a federal agency, so their employees cannot be doing that. Now, that doesn't mean that jobs can't also make those decisions, but in general, you have federal laws and then your states and local laws as well, like how they recently also decriminalized, at least, a certain type of hallucinogenic mushroom in, I want to say, Denver. It was one of the Colorado cities, and they've been studying how that can be used to treat PTSD. So that's still also illegal at the federal level, but because states' rights, certain local ordinances and state ordinances can make these decisions, just like they do with fluoride in the drinking water. There are different types that are added to different water systems, depending on the content of the local water. So since it's states' rights on this, fluoride is not federally required at all in all drinking sources in the United States, but the levels of fluoride in water are regulated by several different government agencies. In 1962 onward, the United States Public Health Service recommended that water supplies contain between 0.7 and 1.2 milligrams of fluoride per liter of drinking water to help prevent tooth decay. They updated that in 2015 when they started questioning that again, and they did that study we talked about in our last segment about Harvard Health, and made that new fluoride level 0.7 milligrams per liter. So they dialed it back to be not just between 0.7 and 1.2, but be capped around 0.7 milligrams per liter. So that change was made, as we discussed in the previous segment, partly because people more often now get fluoride from other sources like toothpaste than in the past. Now, the natural drinking water sources in the U.S., for comparison, have an average fluoride level of about 0.2 milligrams per liter. Although, as we discussed before, in some places it can be a lot higher because it just varies depending on the water source. So it's about 0.5 milligrams per liter more in water that has had fluoride added to it, and that is down about 0.5 milligrams per liter since, 1962. So we have kind of a step down here where we went from 1.2 to 0.7, and now our regular drinking water is 0.2 in most places. So I just want to give you guys the baseline of that 0.2 that is just naturally occurring in water to give you guys an idea of how much fluoride we're really adding to our bodies. So, starting now with the EPA, they have set a maximum amount of fluoride allowable in drinking water of being 4 milligrams per liter. That is a lot higher than that 0.7 milligrams per liter we discussed earlier. Long-term exposure to high levels can cause that skeletal fluorosis, where it's building up in your bones, just like it can in your teeth, and that can eventually result in joint stiffness and pain. It can lead to weak bones or fractures in older adults as well. Remember, as we get older, we're more prone to issues like osteoporosis or to arthritis, and those are all some joint and bone problems. So adding in too much fluoride can further complicate that. The EPA also set a secondary standard of no more than 2 milligrams per liter in order to prevent children from getting dental fluorosis. So we don't want that to happen to the kids. We don't want that to happen to the adults. Both children and adults can get fluorosis. So the secondary standard is really a guideline of that 2 milligrams per liter for kids. It's not really an enforceable regulation, but your public water systems have to tell the customers if the fluoride level goes above that 2 milligrams. So as I mentioned before, you can go ahead and check with your town council if you did not catch the notice, because as we all know, a lot of times agencies will go ahead and they'll technically give you a notice, but it may be in the fine print somewhere, or it's not somewhere you would normally receive the information. We would have to seek it out really in order to see it. So hit up your council members, ask them about the fluoride content in your water if that's something that is concerning you. Your states can also set your maximum fluoride levels in drinking water to be lower than the national 4 milligram a liter standard. So that means that they're not allowed to go higher than 4.0 milligrams per liter, but the states can set their own maximum levels depending on what they actually believe. Now for bottled water, those standards are set by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The fluoride levels allowed in there vary based on annual average air temperature in the place where the water is sold. So that's very interesting to me. For bottled water that does not have fluoride added, the maximum fluoride level allowed is 2.4 milligrams per liter in places that have colder temperatures. But for water in which fluoride is added, the max allowed is 1.7 milligrams per liter in cold climates. But if fluoride is added, the FDA recommends that manufacturers do not go above that 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is what the PHS also recommended. So, TLDR, does it cause cancer? People have been studying that link between fluoride and cancer for several years. Some of the controversy for it stems from a study that had lab animals used in the U.S. National Toxicology Program in 1990. The researchers in that study found uncertain evidence of cancer-causing potential of fluoridated drinking water in male rats. Now, they base that on a higher than expected number of cases of bone cancer in the rats, and there was no evidence of cancer-causing potential in female rats or in male or female mice. So mice and rats, different creatures, especially in the science context. So in this case, only male rats had any differences that they thought might be correlated with the fluoride. So remember, correlation and causation are not the same things. So two things happening at the same time or around the same time are correlated, but that doesn't necessarily mean one caused the other. In this case, they weren't sure if the rats just happened to have cancer or if the fluoride was associated with it, particularly since it only seemed to be happening in the male rats. Most of the concern about cancer does tend to be around osteosarcoma, though, which is that type of bone cancer those male rats ended up having a higher than expected number of. A theory related to how fluoridation might affect osteosarcoma is based on how we discussed that fluoride tends to collect in areas that have a lot of calcium, which means your bones, particularly in parts of your bones where they're growing. Those areas are called your growth plates. Those are the areas that tend to be like the ends of your long bones. So your femur, your humerus, stuff like that. The bones of your arms and legs largely. So when you're a kid, you have a lot more bones than you do as an adult. But that is because they fuse to each other as they get older. And so you end up with those approximately 206 bones as you become a full adult. So those growth plates, those areas where the bones join together as you turn from a child into an adult, really are where osteosarcomas tend to develop. Some scientists think that fluoride might somehow cause cells in your growth plates to grow faster, which might make them more likely to eventually become cancerous. So, what have they found in these studies? They found that there is a possible link between water fluoridation and cancer, but they are not sure if it's correlative or if it is causal. They found that exposure to higher levels of fluoride in drinking water was linked to a higher risk of osteosarcoma in boys, but not in girls. And that was from a Harvard School of Public Health study conducted in 2006. However, there was a note by the researchers who worked on that study that said there was another component of the study that didn't really match those results that were found in the report. So even the researchers who performed this study advised caution in interpreting the results. And if you look at the second part of that study, which they published in 2011, they compared the fluoride levels in bones near tumors in people with osteosarcoma to the levels in people with other types of bone tumors, and they found no significant difference between the fluoride levels in the two groups. So it's not as likely that it is actually causing osteosarcoma. It just may be that people who have certain types of bone cancers are more likely to also be using a lot of fluoride. More recent studies have compared the rates of osteosarcoma in areas that have higher versus lower levels of fluoridation in the UK versus the United States, and those studies have not found an increased risk of osteosarcoma in areas that have a lot of water fluoridation. So, it's kind of inconclusive at this point. They found some studies that suggest there's a correlation, but not really anything that is truly causative. If you're still concerned, though, and you would like to reduce your fluoride exposure, you can find out the content in your drinking water. You can also get the Consumer Confidence Report in order to find out what is in your drinking water. That Consumer Confidence Report is from public sources of water. So if you have like city water or a shared public water source, then that they're required by law to give you guys an annual report on water quality, or at least to make it available. They don't have to send it to you, but they do have to create it, and if you ask for it, they have to give it to you. So go ahead and hit up your local city water company and ask for that Consumer Confidence Report. If you have well water, you can have a reputable lab test the fluoride levels for you. You can also reach out to the EPA. They have a safe drinking water hotline, and that number is 1-800-426-4791, 1-800-426-4791 to get some more general information about drinking water safely. If you live in areas that have a high amount of fluoridated water, you could also consider using alternative sources of drinking water, like I get that pump water. That's not because of the fluoride. It's just because I think the city water is very gross and it's very high in lime and calcium here, just because that's what a lot of the rocks in this geographic region tend to have. But you can also contact water bottlers to find out about their fluoride levels. There are several methods to filter fluorine out of water as well, but those can be expensive. The CDC also recommends that parents give children under the age of 6 only a pea-sized amount of toothpaste for brushing and make sure the kids aren't swallowing it. Now, I know kids are prone to swallowing everything from coins to Legos to beans. They'll stick them in their nose, they'll swallow them. It's hard to keep them from swallowing it. So just make sure they don't get more than that pea size just in case they do end up swallowing a lot of their toothpaste. Also, speak to your child's dentist before using fluoride toothpaste in kids under 2 years of age. You can get low and no fluoride toothpaste and mouth rinses, so just check the labels on those as well, just like you would check the labels for any type of food that you're getting for added sugar. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to dive some more into the world of water.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about links between fluoridated water and cancer. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what happens if we remove the fluoride and a little bit about how your body uses water. So, if you live in the U.S., it's highly likely that your tap water is enriched with fluoride. Remember, we said that was about 75% of Americans are drinking water that is fluoridated. However, with states' rights, that amount of fluoride can depend on the city, the state, etc. So Juneau, Alaska decided to remove some of the fluoride from their water because they did a study between 2003 and 2012 where they looked at the dental records of all the kids and adolescents in the city who access dental health services through Medicaid. They found optimal community water fluoridation was occurring in 2003 and then analyzed the dental claims of 853 kids and teenagers up to 18 years old who received dental care that year. So with statistics, we want at least a minimum data set of 30 children and adolescents in this case, in order to get a well-rounded look at our data. So this one has 853 people, so that is awesome. That helps us prevent any errors in our samples. The more people you have, the more data that you have, the easier it is to make sure that we are measuring what we're supposed to be measuring, and that anything that's super weird in the data is not coloring all the rest of the data. It's like if you make 4 A's and a B, it's really going to drag your GPA down a lot with just those 4 grades. But if you have 12 grades and only one of them is a B and the rest are A's, then it's going to still be a little bit higher. So we found that the average number of cavities procedures for the 0 to 18 age group was significantly higher in the 2012 treatment group when the community no longer contained fluoride than it had in the 2003 group before they made that decision to stop fluoridating their water. Specifically, they said, quote, "The odds of a child or an adolescent undergoing a dental caries procedure in 2003 was 25.2% less than that of a child or adolescent in 2012. So taking the fluoride out of the water appears to have increased the likelihood that your child is going to have to go in and have a procedure related to having cavities. So, root canals, having your teeth filled, your cavities filled, all that jazz, it increased by 25% after they removed the fluoride. That suggests that the added fluoride did have a protective effect on oral health, and once they removed it, it was missing when the water supply didn't go through that fluoridation process. Remember, natural water is about 0.2 milligrams per liter, and we want to keep that somewhere between 4 and 0.7 milligrams per liter, depending on whether you're following the EPA's guidelines or the PHS or your local ordinances. Now, they also found that consequently, the cost of providing dental care to the inhabitants of Juneau, Alaska had increased in 2012 compared with 2003, even after adjusting to accommodate the effects of inflation. They additionally found that children younger than 7 years received more interventions for the treatment of cavities in 2012 than kids who were in the same age group in 2003. They also saw a corresponding increase in costs for dental care in young children in 2012. They adjusted for inflation and found that cavity treatment increased in cost by 73%. That was attributable directly to no longer putting fluoride in the water, and they estimated that at costing approximately $255.60. So what that really means is that taking the fluoride out of the water in this area, the specific area of Juneau, Alaska, was costing people more money overall, and was also making it more likely that their kids were going to be having to get these dental treatments for cavities. You're more likely to have cavities. It's more likely to cost more money if you take the fluoride totally out. But we do need to note that since the fluoride naturally occurs in a lot of water, the community water sources for that particular area still had some fluoride, but it was 10 times lower than the optimal levels for oral health for preventing cavities to begin with. So their natural water did not have a high enough amount to begin with, and then when they took the fortified component out, that caused more problems. So it really just depends on where you live as well, but it was preventing the teeth from being able to really remineralize early signs of decay. You need some fluoride in order to remineralize your teeth in early stages of decay. So, fluoride, you need a little bit of it. You don't want too much of it. Either way, if you have too little or too much, it can really cause some problems with your teeth. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about how our body uses water. When you drink water, it helps you through all kinds of different physiological processes, digestion, eliminating waste, protecting you. It can be hard to see how that works because it's everywhere all the time. Our bodies are largely composed of water. But we can talk about how healthy hydration helps keep our bodies in working order. Our mouth is the first stop in the digestive tract. If you ever watched that episode of The Magic School Bus where Miss Frizzle and the kids go into Arnold's digestive tract, then you will very much remember the diagram that I am thinking of right now as they go into his mouth and down through his body. So the first stop on your tour of the way water works in the body is saliva. It's secreted by your salivary glands, but it's mostly water. And saliva helps break down your food so you can digest it better. Water also will help dissolve and break food and nutrients apart really easily. That is not really surprising because that's what it does in digestion. You dilute things with water, just like you would dilute down some juice. It's going to do that in your body too. So washing down food with water can help your digestion run quickly and efficiently. There are nutritionists and dietitians who will recommend that you don't drink water at all during your meal, but drinking it after is fine. I don't have an opinion on that either way, but I'm also not a dietitian or a nutritionist. I recommend speaking with one if you are super curious about that as well. Now, mixing water with your meal helps continue your food's path through your stomach towards the small intestine, and that's actually where most of the water you drink is absorbed. People think that most of your water is just excreted in your urine, but that's not really the case. A lot of it is absorbed by those microvilli in your intestines. We talked about those in a previous segment or previous show, and those are those little finger-like projections. And the point of microvilli is to increase the surface area of your small intestine. So instead of it just being a smooth tube going through there, they have these little things that stick out, and they really do look kind of like little fingers or little bristles. And that just allows more areas for the water to contact it and the nutrients and minerals in there to contact parts of your intestine in order to absorb the things that it needs. So it's getting you maximum water absorption by having these little tiny finger-like projections sticking out in the tube that is your small intestine. Water absorbed there is transported through your body in your blood. So in your microvilli pulls that water out, it goes into your bloodstream because there are blood vessels lining just about every surface of your body, just about. And then you drink enough water to help you maintain a healthy blood supply. So we think about water for digestion, we think about it when we have headaches, but it's also good for your blood, it's good for your bones, it's good for your teeth. Sometimes waste materials will build up in your blood and we need them to be removed. So when that happens, your kidneys help process that out for you. They are a great filter for waste and other toxins. So when you're drinking water, you're helping flush the kidneys out through peeing. If you don't have enough water and you're not able to excrete all those extra minerals and stuff in your body, then you can end up getting kidney stones. You can also get stones in other parts of your body. You can get calcium stones, you can get tonsil stones. It's pretty crazy all the different ways that your body can kind of sequester off these little pieces that it's like, oh no, this is not great for me. I'm not getting enough of something, or I'm getting too much of another thing. So I'm going to mineralize this and I'm going to get it out of my body. But it can be very painful for us to do that. So we should just drink the water to prevent it. Another way you can get toxins out of your body is through normal bowel movements. So drinking water can help you with constipation. If you're constipated, drink some more water. It helps soften your stool and it'll push it through your colon. Your skin is also going to really need water. Perspiration, sweating, is another body function that really relies on water. Your sweat has water, minerals, electrolytes. Electrolytes, they're what plants crave. Remember, that's what is in Gatorade. That's why we drink Gatorade, is because it's replenishing the electrolytes we're losing as we sweat. And then there's also a variety of other compounds that your body might want to eliminate. Hydration is going to give your body enough fluid to sweat out the stuff it doesn't want. So in addition to removing waste, perspiring also helps you maintain a normal body temperature. So just like how cats and dogs pant to go ahead and evaporate that water out of their mouths to help them cool down, it's similarly happening on the outside of your body. Moisture evaporation, when it turns from a liquid water to a gas, that's what helps us cool down, whether it's through sweat or whether it's with animals panting. That's because it takes energy, takes body heat, to turn liquid water to water vapor, and then that leaves you feeling nice and cool. We're going to go on another break. Stay tuned, and when we come back, we are going to talk about dehydration and some cool things about water.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about how our bodies use water and what happens if we remove fluoride from the water supply. So now we're going to talk about dehydration and some cool facts about water. So with dehydration, we need to be very careful. Not only is it not good for our skin and for our body functions, but it can really lead to some really bad headaches and to some larger problematic symptoms with our body. Now, we're all busy people. It's easy to forget to drink water when, you are cooking dinner or you're at work or you're focusing on getting the kids everywhere that they need to be. But your body can often alert you to dehydration with several different symptoms. Thirst is the most obvious one. But by the time your body's telling you that you're thirsty, you are likely already mildly dehydrated. That's why your body's thirsty, is telling you, hey, you need to catch up. So really, we need to be drinking water proactively before we get to that point. Other signs of dehydration can include, some problems focusing. You can feel fatigued. It might have a headache. So it can be kind of subtle. At this point, if I am having a headache, I do the full gamut that I'm sure a lot of y'all do as well. Is my ponytail too tight? Do I need more water? Am I drinking too much water without other food? Do I need food? Do I need caffeine? Too much caffeine? Not enough caffeine? All that jazz. So when you start feeling like you're having trouble focusing or you're feeling tired, kind of think in that same manner as you would for a headache. Am I drinking enough water? Do I maybe need a snack? Is my blood sugar low? If I'm having difficulty focusing, maybe I should also just grab a water and a snack. Grab an unsweetened tea maybe. And just go ahead and listen to what your body's trying to tell you. Now, prior to this, I wasn't always aware of what exactly my body was trying to tell me with these things. And I still can't sort it out for the headaches part of the time. I don't know if it is water or what. All I know is I can go through these steps, and generally one of the steps I take is going to solve it. It's no different from when you call in to tech support and they go through troubleshooting with you. You're just troubleshooting your body. It's the same thing that happens when you go to the doctor. Hey doc, I've got these symptoms. What might be causing that? So in this case, you're just going, okay, I'm trying water, I'm trying a sandwich. Okay, yeah, now I do feel better. Give it a shot. See how it makes you feel. You want to make sure that if you do have those symptoms, that you drink the water and then keep drinking it throughout the day to totally get your body rehydrated. Just because your body is no longer saying, oh, hey, I'm thirsty right now, doesn't mean that it's good to stop. We need to make sure that we are getting that proper amount of water each day. So I recommend getting those bottles that are, like 16 ounces, so you always know exactly how much is in your reusable water bottle. And it's like, okay, I need to drink 4 of these in order to get my 8-ounce glasses for a total of 64 ounces per day. But if I'm working out, I'm going to want to drink more than that. I also have a bottle that I used to use on digs, and it is 1.8 liters of water. And it has a measurement system on the outside of it that tells me in ounces and in liters how much water that I'm drinking. But I also know if I fill this thing all the way up to the top and I don't put ice or anything in it, I have exactly 1.8 liters of water. So if I drink 2 of those, then I have had 3.6 liters of water and can go from there. I'm not great at always converting my ounces to liters on the fly, but if you want to, you can go ahead and get one in a different measurement system if you'd like, or, just Google it real quick. We have the entirety of the world's information at our fingertips at any point in time now. So to know if you're drinking enough water, one easy way to check it is in the bathroom stall. The color of your urine is going to really help indicate your state of dehydration. If you have really dark water in the toilet bowl, you're going to need to drink more. And by that I mean dark urine. If you have a really light, pale yellow in there, then you're pretty much well on your way to being properly hydrated. Just keep an eye on that when you go, and you will know. So is all water the same? Not exactly. It's varying, not just in fluoride composition, but also chlorine is used to treat public drinking water to really keep bacteria from tainting your water supply and making you sick. But if you want to get the taste or smell of chlorine out of your tap, you can do that in a couple different ways. Activated carbon filters can really help remove chlorine from your drinking water, and they can be attached to the faucet in your home or used in water filtering pitchers and vases. So a lot of like Brita filters and stuff have something that's like a carbon filter, activated carbon filter in it. It's not just, a ton of carbon in there. So if you put an aerator on your faucet, it can also help reduce the taste of chlorine. Bottled water does generally taste better than tap water, but, let's try for recyclable containers if we can. We want to reduce plastic bottle waste by reusing those water bottles. So maybe instead of getting that giant package of, what do they come in now? 16, 32 water bottles, we can go ahead and go, hey, how about instead I get one of those bigger jugs? You can get those refillable jugs that you see at the water cooler at work at most local grocery stores and fill them up out there. It is pretty cheap to fill it up. It's like, I think $1.50 versus if you buy just a gallon of water, it is like if you buy a gallon jug, then I believe it's like 64 cents or more, but you can get 5 gallons for $1.50, at least where I live in Texas, and you can also just keep reusing that container, even though it is plastic. It is a giant reusable jug. So we have 2 in our house, and we go through them quite quickly, but we just keep reusing them each time. So it's a lot easier. Now, I am a small woman, so I'm working on my upper body strength right now in the gym, but right now, my ex is who carries the giant water bottles because we do get the 5-gallon ones, and they're a little unwieldy for my small arms, but you can also get it in 3 gallons, and I believe they might go as small as 1 gallon, but, 3 gallons is pretty good, I think. So the last thing I really want to tell you guys about water and how cool it is that some of my friends who study bones for a living, what I went to school for my master's for, they study isotopes. So isotopes are going to be things like oxygen. They're different elements that are present in our bodies, and you can get them from what you are eating or what you're drinking frequently. Oxygen isotopes, in particular, since they are associated with H2O, water, you can tell a lot of things in someone's bones from their oxygen isotopes in their bodies. You can check out their growth rates. You can see seasonality of the place where they lived. You can tell about their geography and what they ate and drank as well. So they use this in archaeology a lot, in addition to more modern populations with skeletons. And you check for isotope variation in the bone and in the teeth. So the water that you consume has been used to show geographic relocations, identify outsiders to groups, and tell us more about ancient life history. You can also see time changes across dental tissues. So in your teeth, you can see, how the seasons have changed really, or how time has passed and what's been going on with those populations. You can also see it in geological formations. In human bone, the record of consumed water using the oxygen 18 isotope is really thought to be obliterated by that remodeling process of the bone that we talked about in the segment on milk, I believe, where you have osteoclasts tearing down parts of your bone and your osteoblasts rebuilding it with new bone. So it's just renewing your cells. That's what they're supposed to do. It's normal and healthy. But that remodeling process occurs throughout life. And when it does that and it breaks down those oxygen isotopes from the water that you've consumed, then it's going to also remove those isotopes. Now, what that means is that when we do isotope analysis on bones, generally it's going to represent your environmental experience of that skeleton's environmental experience over the last 20 years of their life, due to decay rates of that isotope and also due to how tissue is renewed and remodeled as we age. So, I think that that's really neat. You can read more about that in online papers related to science. If you are a science article junkie like me, there is a great one by Maggiano, White, Stern, Peralta, and Longstaff, 2019. And it is called Focus Oxygen Isotope Microanalysis Across Incremental Layers of Human Bone, Exploring Archaeological Reconstruction of Short-Term Mobility and Seasonal Climate Change. It's pretty neat. I encourage you guys to Google some more about how water can be used to tell us all about our ancestors and about modern humans. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, and writing a nice review always really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'd appreciate it. Thank you kindly, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.